All right. Hello, Fitchburg family, and anybody outside of Fitchburg. This is Joe Maldonado bringing you episode 3 of D1 All Stars. The purpose of D1 All Stars is to highlight the hidden gems in our community, in our neighborhoods, and this gem's not so hidden. A lot of folks know who she is. She was just actually in the Fitchburg Star recently, and does tremendous work in the field of healthcare, entrepreneurship, youth development. I don't know. You probably have other hidden talents that I've haven't heard about yet, but I'd like to introduce everybody to Dr. Jasmine Zapata. Welcome to D1 All Stars.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Jasmine, if you could tell us just a little bit about who you are. You could start as early in life as you want, taking us up through today. Tell us who you are and how you got here.
Yes. I'll start who I am currently, and then I'll go backwards. So as you mentioned, I'm Dr. Jasmine Zapata. Some people call me Dr. Jazz. You can call me whatever you feel most comfortable with. And right now I'm a pediatrician at UW Health, and I'm also the Chief Medical Officer for Community Health at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services in the Bureau of Community Health Promotion. And I'm just so excited about that. Now, why I'm so excited about that goes all the way back to when I was just 5 years old. All the way back. When I was just 5 years old, I told my parents that I wanted to be a doctor. I even have a little notebook where ever since kindergarten, I journaled in that notebook every year, starting from kindergarten, my desires to be a doctor. I faced a lot of challenges along my path. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I faced some challenges along my path to become a medical doctor, including divorce of my parents, the death of my little brother, a premature birth of one of my own children at only 25 weeks pregnant and 1.5 pounds. I faced a lot of challenges, but I didn't let that stop me, and I ultimately became a doctor. But on my path, I realized that my desire to help people was limited with me just being inside of the clinic walls. I came to realize that only 20% of health outcomes is based on what happens in the hospital and clinics. The other 80% is due to individual health choices, social determinants of health, your environment, social and economic factors. And that's what really got me excited about entering into the field of public health. So that's a little bit about how I got to the point I am today, where I still work in the hospital, going to deliveries as a pediatrician, but I'm also a chief medical officer for community health with our state. And I just love what I do. So that's my whole life story.
So you're doing double duty. You got 2 jobs, as if doctor wasn't demanding enough.
just different outlets.
That's
it's
right.
All important.
So you're Milwaukee native like myself.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get to our side of the state?
Great question. So I grew up, as I mentioned, in Milwaukee, and I knew I wanted to be a medical doctor. And at the time that I applied for medical school, and I believe still currently in Madison, we have the only school of medicine and public health in the nation where your medical training is just combined and intertwined with public health training. And that really drew me to stay in Wisconsin for my training. And so that's how I got from Milwaukee to Madison after I finished college. I went to Marquette for college in Milwaukee, and then I moved to Madison about 12 years ago for medical school, and I never left.
Well, we're glad you're here. And more specifically, you live right around the corner from me. You're over on Williamsburg Way.
Yep.
Why Fitchburg? Why the neighborhood you're in? How'd you get over here?
Yes. I love Fitchburg because of its diversity. I love the parks. I love the sense of community. And it's a great location. It's close to everywhere I need to go. I was joking with one of my best friends who lives in Chicago. I was like, I'm so spoiled because everything I need is within a 11-minute radius, whether it's church, going to work, my mama's house, grocery store, everything is within 11-minute drive. So,
and you come to Luna's often. I've seen you in the store.
Yes.
So appreciate your business and appreciate you being in the community. Tell us, apart from sort of the convenience of it, what do you cherish and value about the neighborhood that you live in?
Mm-hmm. Some things that I cherish and value is a sense of family. There's been a lot of times where if somebody's dog gets loose or if somebody's going through a difficult time, people rally around and support one another, even from the signs that are on people's lawns to just some of the community events. That really is special to me. One of my favorite is sometimes like even just movies in the park where they have like a big screen projectors, and then all the families just come and play together and let the kids watch movies in the summertime. That's things that I really appreciate, that family atmosphere.
I love it. So tell me, what do you feel like our city, our community needs more of?
Ooh, there's a lot. But one thing that I would say our community and our city needs more of, just in general, is outlets to promote healing. And that can mean a lot of things. Over the last year, and even before that, there was a lot of inequities that we see, not only in physical health, but also mental and emotional well-being as well. And especially now, as we're transitioning into life after COVID, which we're still in the pandemic, but as we're just looking ahead to returning to some sense of normal and going back to our lives, really, when you look over the last year, it has been very traumatic for so many. So something that I would like to see in our community is just outlets for healing, whether it be physical healing, whether it be social and emotional healing and well-being, just outlets to do that. And it can look like, that can take many shapes and forms, but that's one thing that I would say is definitely needed in our community.
How does some of that social healing for like, if people know what to expect when you get to the doctor, but what does that mean, like mentally, social, emotionally?
Mm-hmm. Social connectivity is something that we have seen in the medical and public health world to help promote positive health outcomes by having positive social connections. A lot of times people separate those two as like, okay, health and well-being is going to your doctor and working out, but your social well-being is directly tied into your health outcomes. So that can mean just places to convene, have a conversation, a place to explore shared interests, a place for our young people to go to express their creativity and interact with one another. Those are some of the things that are really important, and that's what it could look like.
So we gotta get out this summer and be around each other. That's one thing I'm missing as well. From this pandemic, is the ability to connect, see the people that familiar faces, friends, acquaintances, and everything like that, especially for our youth. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to light. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we'll talk more with Dr. Jasmine Zapata and D1 All Stars. And we are back with Dr. Jasmine Zapata and D1 All Stars. Welcome back. So you were telling us, about your role and your dreams about becoming a physician. And I just remember when I was in college, I said I wanted to be pre-med. I took that Chem 103 class and I was done. I said, I'm gonna have to drop this pre-med title and just go with my major. Tell us a little bit about your journey through that process, because it's years to get that degree, and then you got to do stuff after that and then stuff after that. So take us on a journey.
Yes. Well, as I mentioned, when I was 5, I said I wanted to be a doctor. And at that time, I don't know what I was thinking as a 5-year-old, if I even understood the scope of what a doctor even was. But as I got older and began to learn more about the profession, I really knew it was something for me. I really loved science and math, and I loved problem solving. Also, my family always would say that I was like very nosy or a detective. And it come to find out that those are skills that are needed as a doctor. So those were just some of the things that I was interested in as I was younger. But one of the things that really solidified my plans to become a doctor was when I was only about 11 or 12 years old. My little brother, who at the time was about eight, he got diagnosed with epilepsy. And I'll never forget the first time he was admitted to the hospital because he was having seizures, and we were trying to figure out what was going on with him. And I'll never forget being in his hospital room, and every morning a group of doctors would come right outside the room, and the door would be closed, and they would be in deep conversation. And then they would come in and talk to our family, and then they would go back out and be in deep conversation to help figure out what was going on with my brother. And I'll never forget at that moment saying, as a little girl, 11 or 12, I said, I'm going to do anything that I need to be the person outside of that door to figure out what's going on. I wished that I, even at that 11 and 12-year-old age, could go out there and be included in that conversation to figure out how to help my little brother. So that's really when my plans were solidified, right at 11 or 12. And then as I went through middle school and high school, I continued to be very excited about science and learning. And also, I began to learn about health inequities, where you actually see differences in health outcomes just based on things like what zip code you grew up in, or your race and ethnicity. And I said, I definitely have to get into this field. But when I was in high school, there were counselors who actually told me, it's too hard to be a doctor. It's going to take too long. You should switch your path. And there were some times I started thinking of other directions, but I was ultimately able to stay on track. And when I went to Marquette, I majored in something called biomedical sciences, which I loved. I got to take anatomy courses and other scientific courses, and that helped prepare me to enter into medical school. So that's just a little bit about my path.
Excellent. Now, I remember I used to be with United Way, and you spoke at a board meeting, and it was just something that really sat with me for a long time. And you talked about, the fact that race and racism often plays a factor in health outcomes, regardless of income level, regardless of education level. And it tends to lead to complications in particularly Black women.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to talk about that. So right now in Wisconsin, we have the #1 Black infant mortality rate. And how we define infant mortality is live born babies who die before their first birthday. So again, before they even reach the age of 1 year old. And we lead the nation in Black infant mortality rates. And the thing that is driving those numbers is babies being born too early and too soon. A lot of times when I talk about this issue, people will think that the leading cause of Black infant mortality is due to complications of sudden infant death syndrome or unsafe sleep. Those are extremely important, and those do contribute, but the #1 factor that is causing these high rates of Black infant mortality is complications of prematurity, or babies being born too early, too soon, or like a low birth weight. And we know that college educated Black women have much higher premature birth rates and adverse birth outcomes compared to white women who drop out of high school.
Wow.
So we see that it's not just, depending on your income. Also, there are studies that show that first generation women who come to the United States from Africa, their birth outcomes are similar to white women, but the longer that their generation is here in the United States, that's when you start to see these disparities come. So it's not just something just simply in our ethnic heritage or in our DNA. It's something about being a Black woman in the United States that is impacting these birth outcomes. And why I'm so personally, one of the reasons I'm so personally and professionally impacted and passionate about this is because I was one of those statistics. Right when I was in my second year of medical school, I was due on January 2nd with my second child. But on September 20th, I went into premature labor at only 25 weeks pregnant and had a baby who was born just 1.5 pounds, who needed brain surgery, heart surgery, was on life-saving measures, on life support, and was in the ICU in the intensive care unit for 3 months. And I was in medical school. I was not a high-risk pregnancy. I didn't have many risk factors. I was very well educated, but yet I had that birth outcome. So I'll stop there, but it is these numbers and statistics are definitely real.
So the takeaway is racism is deadly. We've always known that, but in this context, it's something a lot of people probably don't know about. So going deeper into that, where does that impact manifest itself? Does it manifest itself in, women's experiences in the hospital with clinicians? Is it racism in the world that Black women have to experience? What causes this?
This is a great question. And you're going to have to invite me on for a series or for a whole day if you want to really dig into this. But I will say in a broad overview, it's multifactorial. There are many different factors that are playing a role. So yes, interpersonal racism can have an impact, but also systemic racism that we see. It's not a coincidence that in Wisconsin, we have some of the highest rates of inequities in our criminal justice system, racial inequities in sentencing. We have one of the highest racial wealth gaps here. We have racial inequities in our education system. All of that plays a role in the lived experience of Black women. In addition to that, how social determinants impact women's birth outcomes, we also do see within our healthcare system inequities in the way that Black women are treated, or feeling sometimes that they're not heard or listened to, that when they express different health conditions or things that are bothering them, that they are not listened to as much. And sometimes this doesn't happen because healthcare providers are just obviously trying to ignore them. There's a lot of implicit bias that plays a role as well. So it's on all levels that we have to tackle this issue.
And I'd love to talk to you more about that, because I know one of the things I've seen with my wife going in and out of the hospital frequently is that implicit bias tends to manifest itself when it comes time to figure out, oh, what do we need to do to treat this? How do we need to, when do we need to go back into the hospital? When do we need to go to medication or surgery and everything like that? And clearly you can see that there's something going on that it may not be intentional, but it's somebody making somebody else invisible because of the color of their skin. And I'm thankful for you to be in this profession, to be able to address these things, not only in the hospital itself, but out here in society. So much appreciated. We're gonna take a break, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about the COVID-19 pandemic and what you've been seeing out in the field. So D1 All-Stars, Dr. Jasmine Zapata, we'll be right back. D1 All-Stars, Dr. Jasmine Zapata, we are back. So Dr. Jazz, you have told us that you're, resident of the Jamestown, King James neighborhood. It's in District 1, and District 1 is by far one of the most racially and ethnically diverse aldermanic districts in Dane County. And We have a lot of beautiful people, Black and brown folks, in our communities. And one of the things that I've noticed that the pandemic has really done is, in many ways, heightened inequality and broadened a lot of the bigger issues in our world that have existed for a long time right under a microscope. As in your role as a physician, can you tell us what you've seen from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, I have seen, I would say, devastation, not only within our community and with patients, but even with other healthcare providers. That's something a lot of times that's not talked about as much, just the mental toll that other healthcare providers have had. And also, there have been many deaths of frontline healthcare workers as well. So those have been things I have seen just my community really impacted in a tremendous way, but also my healthcare community as well. But in addition to that, because we talk about the devastation a lot, but I have also seen resilience like never before. I've seen people come together, supporting one another in ways that have just been really heartening. So those are some of the things that I have been seeing.
So we've seen a lot of death. We've seen a lot of economic tolls. We've seen also a lot of mental health issues as a concern about this, especially with our young people. One of the things that I want to talk about is the vaccine. So I've heard you on, different venues talking about hesitancy with communities that have been marginalized in receiving the vaccine for just reason, because our medical establishments have hurt a lot of people. Can you tell us a little bit about how, from a doctor's perspective, you've been able to manage that communication and been able to listen and sort of allow folks to be able to feel safe?
That is such a great question. The way I've been approaching it, especially since you said from a doctor standpoint, is really in the same way that as a medical doctor, when I'm at the hospital and getting ready to do a procedure with the patient, and my patients are little babies. So when I'm having a conversation with the parents, it's something that we call informed consent, where basically before we do a procedure, we talk about all the potential benefits of the procedure, and we talk about all the potential risks. But we also have a conversation about what if we didn't do this procedure at all? Let's talk about what that would look like and what that would mean for your health and well-being. So we have a conversation with the family. We talk about risks and benefits. We talk about both scenarios: if you get the procedure, if you don't get the procedure, and then open it up for a conversation about what questions the family has. And then there's some times where we'll make a decision to, yes, move forward with the procedure. No, we're absolutely not even going to do it. And sometimes the third option is we might do it. Let's just sit and wait for a little while to see what things develop over time or how you feel about it if you're not comfortable right now. And that's the same way that I've been approaching the conversations about the COVID-19 vaccine. As you mentioned, there are many communities or many people who, for various reasons, have paused. And how my approach has been, let's talk about it. Let's talk about, if you get it, what are the benefits? We know that it's safe and effective. And if you want to, let's talk about the very, very rare side effects, but let's have an open and honest conversation about that. Let's also talk about what life would look like and some of the statistics and information if you choose not to get the vaccine. And if you're not ready to make a split-second decision now, I'm always open to continue having this conversation until you feel comfortable to make the best decision for you. So that's how I've been approaching it. We need to have continuous conversations about this so everyone can feel comfortable.
And what's been the result of that approach for you? What have you seen from folks talking to you after you've presented those options?
For me personally, there's some people I've seen all kind of approaches, even within my own family and
Sure.
extended family, from some people who still just kind of have their own opinions. But even if they say, I'm still not going to get it, like the next week they'll want to have a conversation with me again. I'm like, if you said
Sure.
you didn't want to get it, but now you want to have a conversation. But I know in my heart that they are open to it. They just need more time. There's been some people who thank me and then say, because of this conversation, I felt more comfortable getting the vaccine. So I've definitely seen this approach work. Having these conversations with trusted messengers, people who you have a close relationship with and trust, can be very, very beneficial.
Excellent. So I want to circle back a little bit. We talked about the need for spaces, as the vaccine sort of rates go up, as CDC restrictions, state restrictions, county restrictions loosen up a little bit. People are able to get out. Here in our community, what do you envision a better Fitchburg looking like, particularly for young folks?
Oh, for young folks, places that they can be physically, mentally, and emotionally well. Social connectivity is very important for me. Also, having a space for economic development, learning not only how to get into college and get a good job, but how can you start your own business and be independently wealthy. So those are just some of my personal dreams and desires for our young people here in Fitchburg.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about some of your side hustles and the things you do apart from the medical field?
Yes, outside of the medical field, I am an author. I help people learn how to write and publish their own books so that they can heal, uplift, and inspire others in the community. I believe in the power of real estate investing in order to make our community a better place, increasing diversity in who owns properties and who is the landlord. So I do some of that on the side. I also sing and play the piano. I love to go out on the water and spend time with my family and eat crab legs.
All right. So hopefully we can eat crab legs together sometime soon. Dr. Jasmine Zapata, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us for D1 All Stars, and it is a wrap.
Thank you.